Serious fathers who abandoned your family, why'd you do it? Throw away because, obviously, I ditched my wife and took kids because I was forced into an arranged marriage that I hated from day one. Being Middle Eastern made it difficult for me to leave my wife before we had kids without my family turning their backs on me. We had 2 kids, mostly because we were pressured by our families. I hated my wife, she hated me. I wouldn't be surprised if she fucked someone else to have those kids. Wouldn't surprise me. I cheated on her regularly, including with her own cousin. Her cousin told me, well before I had an affair with her, that my wife was cheating on me. When our daughter was born, I became distant. My mom took care of the baby most often. After my son was born, I filed for divorce. The wife wouldn't agree to it because shitty Middle Eastern culture makes divorcees look like scum. Instead, she took the 2 kids and moved back to England. I remarried and now have 2 more kids. I haven't seen my first 2 kids in over 10 years. Last I heard, they're doing well in high school. I don't care. I don't even know them. I've also been told my ex-wife is still single because our bullshit Middle Eastern culture makes divorced women look like undesirable whores. I'm aware I sound like a piece of shit, but honestly, I'm a product of my environment. I'm tired of foreigners coming to America, having kids here, and then expecting us to share the same mentality as them, even though we are Americans. All my friends are married to who they wanted to be married to. I was forced to marry some woman who I can't even 100% say wasn't cheating on me regularly. My proven kids are 8 and 7. I'm with them all the time. I don't ever plan to ditch them. My wife is the love of my life. She was a good friend from middle school who I lost contact with, but eventually reacquainted with via Facebook. We are happy. She's also a first-generation Middle Eastern American, so we both have a lot in common. Came back from a tour to find out my wife was pregnant. I was 99% sure it wasn't mine because things were rocky for months before I deployed. Dead bedroom. I straight up asked her about it. She started off being defensive and accusatory, but eventually she told me that okay, she had been sleeping with a friend of mine while I was gone with the intent of getting pregnant. I asked for a test and she laughed at me, which was enough proof for me. I filed for divorce and she delayed. She also let her friends and family in on it, but said I was leaving her because I didn't want to raise my child. It got to my family as well, and despite explaining the situation they said they would disown me if I left her. They even tried using the PTSD talk that was in the news about military in general against me, as if my background meant I was touched and should just accept being trapped by someone I used to love. I was stressed, but I'm not an idiot. Not long after, I just grabbed what I could as fast as I could and left. If I ever go back, I'll face criminal charges because I'm being held legally responsible for a life that cannot possibly belong to me. There is still no test, and at this point I would not be surprised if one had been produced and tampered to empower the lie. I'm thinking it will catch up to me one day, but until then I'm living relatively okay elsewhere. It is not right what she did, and I refuse to kneel. I would sooner die or have my legs broken to force surrender than willingly support a woman who attempted to get me to raise a kid that was a result of her own bullshit. She may get me eventually, but by then it'll be too late. She is not getting the payout she planned on. Instead, she is raising a kid alone, though I left her with a nice sob story obviously, and when the sword finally comes down, it'll just be so she can feel like she finally got me. She pointlessly ruined both our lives with this crap. I would've given her a kid on return. I just didn't want to impregnate her and then die and leave my unborn child fatherless, and I'm never going to forgive her for that. Fuck it. No throwaway. I was 20 when my daughter was born. Living about 4.5 hours away from home, friends, family, and everything familiar. Never wanted to be a dad thanks to a pretty crummy upbringing. When things took a turn for the worse in the relationship, I bailed. I knew I couldn't survive up there on my own. Young, immature, crappy job, etc. So I left during a heated argument in the middle of the night. I kinda just escaped. I pushed her out of my mind and did things of my own accord. Paid child support when I could. Birthday presents, maybe a phone call every once in a while. There was no father/daughter relationship. When you're several states away and never see her, it's a lot easier to pretend she didn't exist. Having no connection, it wasn't the hardest thing to do. I lived my own life with not much thought about her. This went on for a few years. I made a move to the west coast, and during a trip back home in the east, I took a visit to see her. I remember crashing on my ex's couch and being awoken by a tiny person she was 4 at this point. Me and her mother both agreed that I don't bring up who I am or try to play dad. Just spend the day with her and enjoy ourselves. It was incredibly awkward for me at first, but slowly things fell into places. Watching her stumble in winter boots, listen to her relays, experiment with new food, lemon pop a seed muffin, dance while we wait for the bus. Thanks to an odd encounter with an employee at an American Eagle, she called me dad. Surreal moment where I locked eyes with her, then her mom. It felt warm and beautiful and loving. We both ignored the comment, but everything inside of me was raging with emotion. We spent the remainder of the day goofing around and assembling a bed. After we put her to said bed, me and her mom talked for a few hours. It was an easy realization for me. After everything that happened that day, I needed to be there. I'll skip most of the details, but the visit happened in October 2010. I made plans to live there by 2012. I moved back home from Cali, worked several jobs, saved, planned everything meticulously so I wouldn't be forced back. In December 2011, I made the move up north. Our relationship was essentially friendship for a few months. She didn't have a father figure in her life and I wasn't about to drop a "Hey surprise, I'm the dad you've been missing." In the beginning it was her coming over for a Friday night sleepover or random park trips. Figuring out everything and how to be a dad. It was intense and the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Still learning, as I think every dad never stops figuring things out. I eventually told her who I was, and it wasn't this big emotional moment. I was just her dad, and she was happy to finally have one around. She doesn't realize I was missing for most of her childhood, and it's a conversation I'm not looking forward to having. I'll be honest and upfront. Hopefully by then she'll understand how much I regret it. If not, then I'll work on patching everything up. Won't quit this time around. Our relationship is perfect now. I have partial custody. She stays with me half of the week. We have paint fights and bake cakes, play flashlight tag in cemeteries, etc. My life is amazing, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. I can't hate on the deadbeat dad thing, because I was one. I totally understand the mentality of not giving a fuck about your kid, since I was a guy who had that going for him. I want to say it was immaturity and fear of fatherhood that held me back, but who knows? I'm sure it's different for everyone. When I was young I suffered a traumatic brain injury. Now in my 30s, I'm suffering the aftershock of that event. I confuse easily. My memory is falling apart in little pieces. I have to ask people to repeat themselves often, because their words make no sense to me the first and sometimes second time around. Like gibberish, sleep disorders, depression, clinical severe, and I have close to no control over my emotions. I wasn't always like this. I was a husband and a father to 4 kids. For 12 years I was married. One morning after a fight with my then wife, I attempted suicide. I was in a psych ward for around 8 days, and when I was released I was picked up by an advocate and driven to the airport to fly back to our home state to seek help with my mental health. 2 months after arriving, I received divorce papers in the mail. So, I'm not a part of my children's lives, because I'm becoming more and more unbalanced each passing year. I'm 33 years old. I'm losing my memories. I have absolutely no control over my emotions. I understand why she did it. I don't want my kids to find their daddy dead because he committed suicide. I guess it's not fair of me to want to be back in that life. All I ever wanted to be was a father and a husband. But because of my problems that won't go away, I was sent on a plane 3,000 miles away from the only things I cared about. I know I'm a burden. I know that I'm getting worse. The thought never occurred to me that the mother of my children would throw me away. I wouldn't have done it to her. Not like this. I'm so sorry to anyone who has to live without a dad. I want to be a father to my children, but that was taken from me when I was thrown from a car and suffered at B. I don't get to have that life anymore because the woman I was with for 16 years decided I wasn't worth the trouble. I was a young 20-year-old virgin college student. She was 18 years old and bipolar. Just 2 months into our relationship she attempted suicide by adding on her Xanax. I rushed her to the ER where she ended up in the psych ward. I continued to visit her for another few months because she was my first girlfriend, the first girl I had sex with, and I had codependency issues. I had sex with her again when she got out of the psych ward and she ended up pregnant. I panicked and insisted on an abortion. Initially she agreed, but then changed her mind and got angry at me for suggesting it. I didn't know what to do and bought her an engagement ring because I thought it was the right thing to do. My parents convinced me that it was dumb to marry a girl I'd only known for 4 months just because of a baby, especially one with mental issues, so I backed out. She ended up really hating me after that, and when summer came, we both went home thousands of miles away from each other. I was ashamed, so I didn't tell anyone about the baby except my immediate family. It was easier to just pay the child support and pretend that nothing happened. Eventually years passed by and with each year, it felt more and more awkward to try to make contact. I would occasionally cyberstalk the mother and I have found that she's recovered from her mental illness and become a great mom who met a great guy that she ended up marrying. It's now 15 years later, and my daughter is thriving judging by Facebook pictures. I wouldn't mind if she wanted to reach out to me, but at this point, I would just be intruding on their happy lives to reach out to them. I had been dating this girl for about 3 years when she got pregnant and had our son. Our relationship had its ups and downs, but was alright for the most part. I was playing poker semi-professionally at the time, still had a part job, and I didn't have investments or savings. It was all in my poker bankroll. I had about $60k in cash in our apartment, which I kept in paper bags in a safe. I fucking kick myself every day that I didn't just put it in a bank, but I was worried about taxes. Every time I'd get to $10k in a bag, I'd put an elastic around it, and I'd start a new one. I had a horrid run of cards over the course of a few months, and when the money finally ran out I had to open up one of my sealed bags. To my complete shock, there was only like $4,500 in it. I opened the others, and they were all missing 90% of their contents. I was left with just over $13k when I should have had $60k. My girlfriend was the only one who knew about the safe. I have no idea how she got the combination. She confessed that she was stealing from me for over a year, taking a few hundred here, a few hundred there. She took trips with her friends to the mountains, Mexico, and Vegas all on my dime. What got me was her attitude. After 2 minutes of apologizing, she was done. Then it's no big deal. You can always make more money and we're a common law couple. We are supposed to share everything. When I kept pressing and pressing to find out where the fuck $47,000 went, she finally snapped and showed me her true colors. Textbook sociopath. When she went to work the next day, I took our 1-year-old to her parents, packed up my clothes and left. The apartment was in her name. I didn't care about the furnishings. I left her a note saying to fuck herself and to never contact me again. I moved across the country that following week to pursue poker full-time in Las Vegas. Unfortunately that didn't work out. I was playing with scared money, and any profits I made got wiped out by the high cost of living. After about half a year there, I took my remaining money to Asia, where my plan was to live a hedonist lifestyle till the money ran out / the bank wouldn't lend me any more credit. Then I'd kill myself. I've been here in Asia ever since. My life back home is such a distant memory it doesn't even feel real anymore. I'm 32 years old. I have like $4,000 to my name. I make $500-800/MO from internet poker to pay my expenses. My life is a complete fucking train wreck, and I'll be surprised if I make it to see my 35th birthday.